I wanted to, before I finish for the day, after I covered this material, um, I'll share this to you because I figured those that have probably watched this, um, I figured that you probably sort of put this together in your own mind. There is a reason why what my state of consciousness puts up on these YouTube videos, the information, or if you will, the data that is represented by what I'm aware of at the time in which I'm aware of it, and why I put that information up at very specific times within the clock system. Okay? Which basically means I'm putting the information into the machine because it's being recorded not only within my own DNA, my timesheet, even though I already punched it out back in December of 2016, which basically means I'm done. The timeline that I wrote, simply stamped it. And I may have mentioned this before, but I was very aware of it. All of the information that represents the way in which my particular timeline was experienced by me because I wrote it is encrypted in a way in which they can't hack it. Because if they could do that, they could hack my timeline. Okay, and change it. And they can do that with anybody, actually. Which means they can crack into your timeline, which means crack into your state of consciousness in which you're experiencing who you are into that memory and put things in your memory that aren't your memory. They know how to do that. The parasitic artificial intelligence knows how to do that because it's got access to your biochip, which means it can write stuff into your unconscious memory because you got all your cellular memories. So the spirit is held in here in the biotechnology communication system. It's an operating system. Okay? Biochip, membrane, memory, and a chip. So this is biotechnology. Okay? It is an avatar. And what it makes the beauty of the avatar, as I mentioned before, is the ability to, how do I put it? And of course, this is where Patty explained, and I knew this anyway, that the female mitochondria side of things, because I run such high-powered magnetic light, which produces such a powerful magnetic shield, that is the basis for which I knew as a child, as soon as I became aware that I was in a spiritual battlefield or a spiritual war, which is an electrical war, and when you sort of already know because of not having, how do I put this? This is not my first rodeo. So what that means is if you've never fought one of these kinds of things before, and once you realize the kind of technology that's being waged against you, because this really is Star Wars, then you were sort of at a deficit or a disadvantage, which has always been sort of one of my gripes. Okay? And that's, and Gaia knows that I do this, okay, because I'm both a student and a teacher, because I look at the entire cosmos as being nothing more than a fucking classroom. I'm just a bigger classroom. Because we learn from everything that is out there that we haven't experienced yet by the other unit of consciousness that's experienced who they are, they share with us. So that's why I've always seen the cosmos, of all the units that are self-aware at between any one moment of time in which whatever is self-aware is experiencing itself, is the evolution of the sum of its parts to maintain its peace, its harmony, and its balance within the energy field in which all that light is held to be aware of what it's aware of. Okay? So if you're a source unit in which you have an enormous amount of love, which goes on forever, which means you know that you're never going to run out of what you are, which is what love is in living spirit, then you realize that wherever you go in which you're experiencing something that is less than what you are, you're in automatic restoration mode. That's an empath. Okay? It just simply means you're going to automatically be broadcasting wherever you go the higher frequency speed that represents what you are, which is a circle of light, which is a spinning or Merkaba, which means you're bringing in the light wherever you are with a powerful cosmic Laniakea antenna. That's what I call myself when I'm in here. It's a Laniakea antenna, because that's love is the law, which means light is the law, which means living light, which is what love is the law. So you're restoring the law, which is restoring the light. Wherever we find ourselves, we become aware that there's something less than what we are in speed. See? And that's just how it works. So when you know that at such an early age, as soon as you come out of the womb, you're up and running. Right? So you had to be careful, as I knew I had to be careful, because when you're aware of so much data that you're processing about the nature of the way that everything is communicating with itself, you realize that you're running a very powerful magnetic shield, which is your protection. When you're going to engage in this kind of a war, because otherwise, if your shield is down, for example, then it makes it easy to come under attack and then be influenced by the thought forms that you're now receiving. And the next thing you know is you begin following those thought forms. The next thing you know, your shield's down even more. Your speed is now going lower and lower and lower. You got to remember, hey, get it back up, get it back up, get it back up. So you spit in your heart wheel higher and higher, and you're going to places where you can heal, which is always being with her. And of course, I've described that process between going in and out of a war zone, going in to heal in a spiritual sanctuary zone, coming back out and raising the light again, right, wherever you go, in order to have, if you will, restoring the light wherever you go, learning as you go, but at the same time trying to have as much fun as you possibly can while you're here, which is maintaining the circle of light and the speed of your Merkaba. Because you're always wanting to maintain and trying to grow your light spirit body, because you want to always go faster and faster and faster and faster, because when you're seeking a spiritual pathway through the light of the teachers that are showing you how to do that, then you want to be going faster and faster and faster so you can reach the highest state of consciousness that is possible to reach by being aware of everything that is possible to be aware of, because everything that is possible to be aware of, everything that is there to be aware of, is held within all that light. So it means that you're wanting to grow to become the largest spirit body of light that's possible, so that the entire cosmos is running on nothing less than what love is. Okay? That's why for me coming in here, I'm not supposed to be experiencing this. I'm not supposed to be experiencing anything less than what I am, which is what love is, living in the light. How is this possible? So that means you're automatically, by virtue of what you know that you are, okay, is not wanting to experience anything less than what love is wherever you go. That's what I call a 0-point reference, okay, which is eternity, which is eternal light, which is eternal spirit, which is eternal unconditional love. Because you are naturally broadcasting the higher frequency energy that you're giving off that others are experiencing. They're experiencing the higher speed frequency that you are. So they give it a word in the English language called love. Or, hey, I'm in a state of peace. Man, this feels beautiful just to be in a state of peace. You know? So they have words to describe what is really the vibrational speed of your oscillating electromagnetic energy waveform experience. So that's why experience can be measured as the speed of the vibration. You know, so naturally it's going to go up and down depending on the geometric space you happen to be at any one particular moment in time, and the influence of the communication signals you're now being hit with your antenna, which is going to affect what? Bandwidth perception, which are the width of the waves, the bands of the waves. Is it a slower wave, slower speed wave, or a high speed wave when you're filling up every single space, geometric space? So we're wanting to fill up geometric space, which is all of it, which means you want to expand the universe. How do you expand the universe with more light to go faster? By going faster. That will raise your state of consciousness. See? So anyway, having said that, I listened to a video not long ago and we talked about programs, CIA programs, about how long they've been around, which, as I mentioned in the previous video, when you have something that is aware of what you are, that has access to your biochip, and can program information in your memory that you don't realize becomes a future behavioral output algorithm, then the system itself and those have access to it means they have access to the algorithms that you were programmed by. And then they can say, see, look what you did. This is a war crime you committed and we can throw you in prison. But by the way, we're the ones that programmed the system in order to program you so that we could use this so we could always control you. Okay? Which means you became a reflection of who we are because you gave us consent to be a part of who we are. So we programmed you to be a reflection of what we are, which is a parasite. So we can show that you're a parasite by choosing to allow yourself to have a relationship with a machine that's going to program you. And since we program you and you gave consent to being programmed by having access to the communication system in which we use our supercomputers to program you with, then you allowed yourself to be programmed by us because we put you all under surveillance so that we could know everything that you're thinking, everything that you're doing, everything that you're experiencing. We put the information into your unconscious memory. Now we're going to use your unconscious memory that we've got a picture of, we've got the information on. Now we're going to throw you in prison. Okay. Remember I mentioned one time in a video about what was it? Where if you use the Nuremberg trials and the Nuremberg doctrine as the basis for which people can be prosecuted for war crimes, okay, against other humans, okay? If you would have gone back and looked at the Nuremberg transcripts, you will find out that there were people who worked in the healthcare community. So I'm talking doctors. We're talking about people that were lawyers and judges, okay? People who represented the legal profession in which they were sitting as judges, they were sitting as lawyers and saying, listen, I was following the laws of the state of Germany. That did not save them from the gallows. Because it means, just as Justice, Robert Jackson, who was the prosecutor and former Supreme Court Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, said, there are certain crimes we cannot tolerate to ignore. And those are crimes against humanity. So it doesn't matter what laws you think you are following, like the mask order, okay? Issuing an order like that, telling somebody that they should be depriving themselves of electrons and oxygen is a crime. So those that engaged in supporting that can be prosecuted because we have the evidence of it. Because it's all on the supercomputer. They can push it up and show a picture of you telling somebody else to put a mask on. That would be a bus driver working for the RTD, the Reno Transit District. Everybody that gave an order to tell somebody to put a mask on, otherwise you're being denied a service, can be arrested as a war criminal. And they don't even realize that what programmed them to do that was a supercomputer, because when you live in a state of fear, which is being in fear of what love is, which is insanity, that allows you to be running at a slower speed, which allows a supercomputer to program you. To program into your memory what it puts there. Now you're going to behave off of that, and then they're going to use that against you as the evidence of the crimes that you committed. Because on this planet, love is the law. That's 528. That's how they can nail you. Okay? So in other words, they became the devil's advocate by setting up the system from which beings were programmed. So this other guy that was working with the CIA, he knew all about these programs. Okay? That's why these vote counts, I would say that probably most everybody knows that there was a red wave, because anybody that's sane knows exactly who Trump represented, which was what the light is, because he said he was going to drain the swamp of all the demons. So if you didn't know that, then you were already held captive by a demon. So those that were even half awake, that even understood what Trump meant by saying such a simple statement, I'm going to drain the swamp, if they didn't already know that their lives were being ruled over by demons, that's a fully programmed unit that lives in the state of fear, which means they don't want to let go of the programming because they're running the program. those that were awake enough to at least realize what they were held to be captive by and don't want to be held captive by it anymore, is why they got to release the relationship that they have with the machine. Okay? Those that run powerful enough light, which means the spin of their Merkaba, knows that they can engage with one of these machines and still not be programmed by it, because the amount of light that we spin to rotate our Merkaba is already running at such a high state of machine it can't capture our state of consciousness. But that's not true for those that haven't graduated yet, or those that have been captured by it to run a slower state because they don't understand how this works. Because when they came out of the womb, for example, like myself, as many times as I've been traumatized, I managed to get my spin back up to keep my light going, to heal my heart, and realize how this works down here. See? And you have millions and billions of people that did not have that. The deck was stacked against them as soon as they came out of the womb. As a result of a biofeedback loop, in which they didn't know the difference between what they are and which they weren't, that they were held captive to, in which they were draining their own light without even knowing it and how it was happening. So, this is one of the reasons why I've tried to quantify in a real-time basis how many core high-frequency identities were coming out of the womb at the time in which they were coming out of the womb, that could attract enough light within themselves to overcome and help raise the state of consciousness within one generation or two generations, to be able to balance out the energy between a black hole and a white hole to bring peace back to this planet. But when you have demons that are essentially control of the communication systems that people are using as an interface that they communicate with without realizing the nature of how that works between a black hole and a white hole, how are they going to know? Because they didn't learn that as a child, and they didn't learn it as a teenager, and they didn't learn it as an adult. So that's where light workers that come in here that are putting up the YouTube videos like the ones that I put up, the ones that Patty puts up, the one that Karen McDonald puts up, the one that the Basis Project puts up, the one that Harold Kotsvela, you can tell the difference between who's telling the truth. Okay? And those that don't. Even though I realize that everybody's taking their own journey, which means the journey that you take is your own and it belongs to you, and that's what it means to have free will. But there are laws in the universe, because obviously source is what light is, which is what love is, because that's the energy that we use to create and manifest the cosmos with. Okay? And then yet you have a paradox. How is it possible that I could ever be experiencing anything less than what love is? This is impossible. How'd that happen? Which is a split in the timeline between love and fear, which means you're living in fear of what love is. How is that possible that you could be in fear of something that loves you? Now you get into all the genetic stuff, all the different DNA stuff. The first star. I'm talking about the first star. Okay? And then the first star nation. The first man or human being. The progenitor, etc. Okay, which means millions of people were denied the knowledge of just how big the cosmos is, the nature of lower creation, and how you evolve and increase the spin in your Merkaba to experience everything that is held within the light, which is what love is. So one way that I thought, and I've mentioned this before, given this particular video that I'm doing, is I mentioned a while back, about a year, was it about a year ago? A little over a year ago, where when a lot of things come to me at the time in which they come to me, at the time in which that information is relevant, that I put it up, okay, just flows. It's like the most beautiful energy to experience. It just comes to me and it flows. Okay, and when it flows, I write it down just exactly the way that energy is experienced. Because I realize that the experience that I'm having at the time that I'm experiencing is only going to last for the time in which I'm experiencing, because everything that is after that will be different than the last. That's the nature of an original artist. Okay? I'm not a robot or a Xerox machine. Okay? The universe would be boring if that was true, because you want to experience something that is different from the last. because you realize how infinite light allows you to do that, because the speed at which you're running is so fast, you're experiencing something different from the last. Okay? So when things come to me, if I don't write them down and share them with how that works, it's lost, it's gone. And this machine knows that, which is why it distracts me a lot to interrupt my train of thoughts, because it knows if I try and experience something that is next and write that down, it will not be the same as the way it was the last, because I won't remember it that way, because I don't normally operate on memory. Okay? And that's obvious protection when you realize you're spinning at such a high rate of speed that allows your conscious creative imagination to be what it is that you are, because you're outside time, not inside time. That's what happens when you graduate, because the speed at which you normally operate is outside time, which is the purpose of a classroom. You don't need a clock anymore. You've learned how to be what eternity is, which is what love is in living spirit. And which means that the core frequency identity, which means the speed of your vibration, is always vibrating outside time. Which means you naturally vibrate outside time. You don't even have to think about it. That's called your core frequency identity, which means it doesn't change. You are what that is. Which means you're a source unit. You're a source unit of pure light, which is pure living spirit that is in that light, that is always seeking to restore the purity, which is the purity of the light, which is the purity of the love, which is what unconditional love is. So obviously when you come in a place, you realize that you're experiencing contaminated water, contaminated soil, and everything that you experience here, it's just like, my God, how is this possible? Because you know what it's like to experience purity, because you have. Because that's what the light is. When it's pure light, which is pure spirit that is in that light. Which means we don't produce toxic stuff, because we love living spirit that is in that light, in that water, in that soil, in that fire. Okay? So one of the things that happened is that I was on the phone on Skype with Patty Broussard, and I was writing down some beautiful, because I love to write love poetry that just flows right through my heart and my spirit, the way that it can hit a girl's heart and open her heart up to help spin her macabre off the charts, because she's feeling how real that energy feels, because she knows it's true. A girl knows what true love is because it's unconditional. It's not seeking to get anything from you. It wants to share how deeply it loves. And when a girl experiences how deep you're expressing how much love you have to give her through your heart, it is her heart that is experiencing that love, and so she knows it's true because it's unconditional. And a girl knows that. A girl who is living through her heart knows another pure heart, because that's what it is. It means that the energy and the love that you're sending is true, because they're experiencing the frequency that you are giving out. She's experiencing 528 at a minimum, okay? And so that's how it works. So at the time that this stuff was being experienced and I was writing it down and I was getting ready to share it online, all of a sudden I became aware, and this is how the speed works of being aware. I was aware that a guy who was asleep in the room next to me, okay? I was in a condo where I had my own bedroom and it was basically like a duplex that was split in half. But he had a bedroom, but we shared a common wall. I knew that he was going to get woken. In other words, he would get a signal that would wake him up, which was the access to the biotech these supercomputers have to wake him up, to deliberately turn the music on real loud to distract me and drive me out of the room and the conversation that I was going to have with Patty Broussard. That's how the artificial intelligence that's parasitic will try and drain my energy to try and anger me as a result of knowing that here was a being that was going to purposely distract me from being able to experience how much love I have in my heart that I was writing in poetry that I was going to put online that it didn't want others to experience.